January 26th, 1966, Australia Day. The Beaumont siblings, Jane, Arnna and Grant, set out for a short trip to Glenelg Beach. It was supposed to be just another day, a few hours of fun in the sun, and then back home by noon. But noon came and went. By evening, their mother, Nancy Beaumont, was pacing nervously, her mind racing through endless possibilities. Where were her children? Why hadn't they come home? Witnesses would later say the children were seen at the beach, playing, laughing. Some reported seeing them with a man, someone no one could identify. After that, nothing. No footprints, no sightings, no answers. In a matter of hours, an ordinary beach day became one of Australia's most baffling disappearances. Decades have passed, and the fate of Jane, Arnna and Grant Beaumont is still unknown. What happened to them? How did 3 children vanish from a crowded beach without anyone noticing? Stay with us as we follow the trail of clues that left an entire nation searching for answers. You're watching True Crime O'Clock, where stories of unanswered questions and real-life mysteries come to life. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a case that demands to be told. Let's begin. The Beaumont family lived a quiet, modest life in Somerton Park, Adelaide. Nancy Beaumont, a dedicated mother, often described her children, Jane, Arnna and Grant, as inseparable. Jane, at 9, was mature beyond her years, always looking after her younger siblings. Arnna, 7, was adventurous and curious, while Grant, just 4, was playful and full of energy. On the morning of January 26, 1966, the children asked their mother if they could spend the day at Glenelg Beach. It was a familiar routine, one they had done many times before. Nancy, feeling confident they knew the area well, agreed. At around 10 a.m., the children boarded a bus, Jane holding Grant's hand as they stepped on board. Nancy waved goodbye, expecting to see them again in a few hours. They had promised to be home by noon. The children arrived at Glenelg Beach not long after, blending into the crowd of beach visitors. They were seen playing along the shoreline, their laughter mingling with the sounds of beach vendors and families. Witnesses recalled seeing the siblings near a shaded, grassy area, but at some point, something changed. Nancy Beaumont waited at home that afternoon, glancing at the clock as the hours ticked by. Noon came and went. By 3 p.m., worry had set in. She paced back and forth, expecting to hear the familiar sound of her children returning through the front door, but it never came. Nancy began reaching out to neighbors and friends. Had anyone seen them? No one had. Desperation began to build as the minutes dragged on. By the time evening arrived, Nancy made the call no parent ever wants to make. She called the police. Jane, Arnna and Grant were missing. Officers arrived quickly, understanding the urgency of the situation. 3 young children, last seen hours ago on a crowded beach, yet no one knew where they had gone. Search teams began combing the area, questioning bystanders, lifeguards and vendors, but no one could provide a clear answer. As the search intensified, unsettling questions began to form. How could 3 children vanish so completely? Had they wandered off, or had someone taken them? The police had little to work with. Witnesses offered vague details, but no one had seen anything suspicious. What started as a routine trip had now become a missing persons case. The Beaumont children were gone, and the search for answers was just beginning. What would you have done in Nancy Beaumont's place? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to True Crime O'Clock. Your support helps us continue to share these important stories. The investigation into the Beaumont children's disappearance began with urgency. Officers canvassed Glenelg Beach, questioning everyone who had been there that day. Slowly, pieces of the timeline began to emerge. Several beachgoers reported seeing Jane, Arnna and Grant throughout the late morning. At around 11 a.m., Jane was seen purchasing snacks from a kiosk near the beach. The attendant recalled her paying with a £1 note, something that stood out because Nancy had only given the children coins for bus fare and a light lunch. Other witnesses described the children playing in a grassy area not far from the shoreline. They weren't alone. Multiple people reported seeing them in the company of a man, tall, thin, with blonde hair. He appeared to be in his mid-30s and was dressed in casual beach attire. What struck investigators was how comfortable the children seemed around him. They were talking, even laughing. No one sensed danger, no signs of distress. But after that sighting, the trail went cold. No one saw the children leave the beach. No one could recall them boarding a bus or walking away. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. By the time evening fell, police had mobilized a large search effort. Officers, lifeguards and volunteers scoured the area, combing the sand dunes, searching buildings and questioning residents in nearby neighborhoods. Despite their efforts, there were no further sightings. This left investigators with troubling possibilities. Had the children wandered off and become lost, or had they been taken by someone? Witness reports of the man with the children became the investigation's most significant lead. An artist was called in to create a composite sketch based on descriptions provided by witnesses. The sketch was widely distributed, appearing in newspapers, on television, and in local shops. The police hoped someone would come forward to identify the man, but despite the widespread circulation, no solid leads emerged. The next steps were crucial. Investigators needed more information, but time was slipping away. As the hours turned to days, public concern deepened. The nation was starting to realize this was not going to be a simple search and rescue. Who was the man seen with the Beaumont children? Was he someone they knew, or a stranger who had gained their trust? Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. If you're invested in learning more about this case, make sure to subscribe to True Crime O'Clock. There's more to this story than you might expect. With no immediate leads, police intensified their investigation, retracing every step the Beaumont children had taken that day. Dozens of witnesses had come forward, providing a fragmented picture of the events leading up to their disappearance. But beyond the vague descriptions of the unidentified man, there were no tangible clues. Investigators shifted their focus to theories. One possibility was that the man seen with the children had gained their trust, perhaps on previous visits to the beach. But this theory led to more questions. Who was he, and why would he target the Beaumont siblings? There was another possibility. The children could have been lured away by an opportunist, someone who saw a brief window of opportunity. Yet no one reported hearing cries for help or witnessing anything unusual. It was as if the children had simply walked off, willingly. As the investigation progressed, tips began pouring in from across the country. Some claimed to have seen the children in other cities. Others described men matching the composite sketch. But as officers chased down these reports, they quickly hit dead ends. In one instance, a witness reported seeing the children entering a boat at a nearby marina. Police dispatched teams to search the coastline, but found nothing. Each lead ended the same way: no evidence, no new information. Meanwhile, the story was dominating headlines. The disappearance of the Beaumont children had gripped the entire nation. People were desperate for answers, and rumors began to spread. Some speculated that the children had been taken overseas. Others whispered of organized criminal networks operating in the shadows. The public pressure on law enforcement grew by the day. Investigators faced mounting criticism, with some questioning their handling of the case in those critical early hours. But behind the scenes, police were exhausting every possible lead. They knew that time was working against them. The longer the children remained missing, the harder it would be to find them. Yet despite their efforts, there was still no breakthrough. The case was beginning to take on an unsettling pattern, one of vanishing hopes and unanswered questions. The next stage of the investigation would focus on individuals with a known history of violence and child abductions. But would any of these suspects provide the missing link to solve the case? What do you think happened to the Beaumont children that day? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're finding this case compelling, don't forget to subscribe to True Crime O'Clock for more investigations like this one. As the days turned to weeks, the disappearance of the Beaumont children became a matter of national concern. Parents across Australia were shaken, questioning how 3 children could vanish from a crowded beach in broad daylight. News coverage intensified, with updates dominating television and newspapers. The faces of Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont were everywhere, on flyers, posters, and bulletin boards. People from all walks of life followed the story closely, many hoping to play a role in finding the missing children. In Adelaide, community members organised search efforts. Volunteers scoured beaches, parks, and abandoned properties. Vigil after vigil was held as families came together to pray for the children's safe return. The police tip line was inundated with calls. Thousands of leads were reported, some credible, others based on rumour. One tip suggested the children had been taken by someone with access to a remote property. Another claimed they had been spotted hundreds of miles away. Each lead required careful investigation. Officers travelled across the country, interviewing witnesses and checking locations. But each time, they hit the same wall. There was no evidence to support the claims. And then there were the hoaxes. Nancy Beaumont, already weighed down by fear and grief, received letters supposedly written by Jane. The letters claimed that the children were alive and would soon return home. But handwriting analysis cast doubt on their authenticity. They were likely the cruel work of someone seeking attention. The letters and similar false leads only deepened the emotional toll on the Beaumont family. Every shred of hope was met with disappointment. The case had now grown beyond the local investigation it had started as. Parents became more cautious, keeping a closer watch over their children. The idea of letting young kids roam freely, something once common, now seemed unthinkable. But for the investigators, the pressure continued to mount. They needed a breakthrough, something that could bring the case back to life. Rumors, speculation, and false leads weren't enough. What they needed was a suspect, someone who could answer the questions that had left the entire nation unsettled. Who could be responsible for the disappearance of the Beaumont children? Was it someone known to the family, or a stranger who acted on impulse? Years passed, but the Beaumont case was never forgotten. Investigators revisited the evidence and witness statements many times, hoping a new perspective might reveal the truth. Without new leads, they began turning their attention to individuals with known criminal histories. One of the first names that came up was Bevan Spencer von Einem, a man with a disturbing record linked to the abduction and murder of young boys. He seemed to fit the description of the man witnesses had seen with the children. Investigators questioned him extensively, but there was no evidence tying him to the Beaumont disappearance. Another suspect, Harry Phipps, a wealthy businessman, was also investigated decades later. Witnesses alleged that he had been seen near the beach that day, and that he resembled the man described in reports. Police searched a former factory site linked to Phipps, but once again, nothing was found. It became a pattern. New names would emerge, sparking fresh investigations, but none of them led to any breakthroughs. Over time, suspects were either ruled out, or their involvement remained purely speculative. Advances in forensic science raised hopes that something, perhaps a trace of DNA, might finally provide answers. Cold case units began applying modern techniques to decades-old evidence. But in the Beaumont case, there was no physical evidence to test. No crime scene had ever been discovered. This lack of evidence created a frustrating paradox. The case was both intensely followed and at a complete standstill. Investigators could only wait for a new witness to come forward, or for someone with long-buried knowledge to break their silence. Despite these challenges, the case continued to draw attention. Documentaries, interviews, and articles revisited the story regularly, keeping the public's curiosity alive. Each time new theories were presented, families across Australia revisited the question that had haunted them for decades. What really happened to Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont? But even as time marched on, no definitive answers ever surfaced. The Beaumont family and the nation remained in a state of unanswered grief. Could someone out there still hold the key to this case? Would you come forward if you had information that could finally bring this mystery to an end? Nearly 6 decades have passed since Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont vanished from Glenelg Beach. For many Australians, the case is more than just an unsolved mystery. It's a reminder of how quickly life can change, how answers can remain just out of reach for generations. The Beaumont case transformed the nation's approach to child safety. Parents no longer felt comfortable allowing their children the same freedoms they once did. Schools and communities developed new safety protocols. Investigations into missing persons cases became more urgent and more coordinated. But for Nancy and Jim Beaumont, the changes brought no comfort. They spent the rest of their lives searching for answers that never came. Every false lead, every cruel hoax, chipped away at the hope they once held on to so tightly. Today, many still ask the same questions. Could the children have been taken by someone known to them? Could modern forensic methods finally uncover a vital clue? Or will the truth remain lost forever? This story endures, not because of speculation or rumors, but because 3 young children were taken from their family, and the people who loved them still wait for closure. The Beaumont case is a story of loss, of missed opportunities, and of a nation that refuses to forget. What do you believe happened on that summer day in 1966? Do you think someone still holds the key to solving this case? Share your theories in the comments below. Thank you for watching True Crime O'Clock. If you found this story compelling, please like and share the video to help keep these important stories alive. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another case that deserves to be heard.